So you want to record vocals that sound legit, professional, and as polished as possible. But you don't have a recording studio. You have like a living room or a kitchen or a bedroom. Well, I'm here to tell you that you just might be able to pull it off. There's a ton of things that we just can't record at home because they are too loud, too bassy. Like trying to record a drum kit in your bedroom, it just never really ends up sounding that great. And it's simply because our rooms can't handle all of this sound pressure. However, one thing that we can record really well at home are vocals. A lot of what I'm about to say in regards to recording vocals at home has to do with the room and the space that you're recording with, and not so much the gear. Although I will give you a few tips on the gear to help you set off on the right path. The first step in any recording is determining the sound that we're trying to achieve. Are you going for a super present, upfront, dry, hip-hop kind of rap style vocal? Or are you aiming for like a roomier, kind of like folk music live sound where you can hear tons of the room? Have a quick conversation with yourself and really think about what you're trying to achieve here before you choose a microphone, before you choose a room. Once we have a clear idea of what we're trying to achieve with our sound, then we can move on to step 2 and choose a room. I see a lot of people in closets and makeshift vocal booths. And to me, all I'm seeing in these small spaces are boundaries. You have your microphone in front of you where you're singing, and then like a foot behind it or to the sides, you have these walls. And the sound is just bouncing off these walls and coming back into your microphone and muddying up your take. Some people will use things like this like 1 or 2 inch foam, super light foam, to try to combat these reflections and reverberations coming from your walls. In reality, a lot of these flimsy foam products are taming some of the high end, some of the sibilance, but they're doing nothing for the mid-range, they're doing nothing for the low end, and these are huge problem areas in recordings. And so it's just not a solution. So my first tip here on choosing which room to record in is get out of your closet. When I'm recording vocals, I'm usually in a bigger open space. Not too big, I don't want a ton of reverberation and echoes happening, unless it sounds really good, unless it works with your sound. And if you are in a nice open space, but you're still experiencing some problems with echoes and reverberation, maybe just like throw some blankets up on the walls. And something I have done in the past, and I've seen other people do, is like take a mic stand, put that top arm totally sideways, crank it up, and just throw a blanket on top and let it droop over. And hopefully that's gonna stop a bit of the sound. Again, this is just gonna stop some of the high end. There's not enough density usually in a single blanket to really control your mids and your low end, but it is gonna do something for you, and I think it might help. Once we find a room that we can sing in and there's not a ton of reverberation or echoes, and we think it's gonna sound pretty decent, we can move on to choosing a microphone to start testing in this room. I see a lot of people buy condenser microphones like this when they first start recording, and I kind of feel like it has something to do with the marketing around it. I see package bundles all the time that are super cheap with a microphone, a pop filter, an XLR cable just to get you going, maybe an interface. And so maybe this is just like a marketing thing. While condensers can absolutely capture your voice in a lot of detail, it's not the only mic choice that we have. And sometimes this is even going to work against you in a recording. And with that being said, let's quickly run through a list of some basic mic principles to help you better make a choice for purchasing or using a mic. Let's start with the condenser microphone. This mic is going to hear everything in the room, including the room itself. It has the ability to capture things in super high detail, but it often tends to pick up every sound in the room. And that's including the hum of your fridge or the traffic driving by, and you can hear like the low end rumble, like a bus goes by, like it's gonna hear that. One other thing to consider when we're choosing a microphone is if you choose some kind of condenser microphone and it's hearing a lot of the room, and in your recording, in your song, you decide that you want to do a bunch of vocal takes, you got a bunch of harmony and other layers. Well, every time you record a new track, you're going to be capturing a little more of that room sound. And if you have like 10 vocals on there, it's going to really start to cloud it up. They're going to stack on top of each other. You're going to have all that room sound. And this is a mistake that I made early on in recording. I couldn't figure out why my vocals were sounding so muddy and crappy. And it's just because I was stacking that ugly room sound take after take and just ruining my recordings. So when you're in the right space, go for it, try the condenser. But more often than not in our home recordings, I prefer to use something different. Let's move on to our second microphone. This is a dynamic microphone. This one is the Sennheiser E835, marketed as like a live vocal mic, something we'd use in a live setting at gigs and playing shows and whatever. This is definitely a contender in the recording vocal realm, especially when we have a room with some echo and we don't want to hear all of that echo. This is going to capture more of just our voice. Here's another dynamic mic choice. This is the Shure SM57, probably the most popular microphone in the world. I've seen this thing used on absolutely everything. Everything. It works great as a vocal microphone. You can put it on a snare drum, your guitar, you could rock it on a stand-up bass, whatever you want to do with it. It's probably going to sound decent. And I would suggest, if you're using this to record your vocals at home, that you put a pop filter in front of it so you're not creating plosives and other weird sounds. Same goes for this guy. Try a pop filter. I just flipped the fuse on my fridge because it's making some low end noise and I don't want it to ruin my video. And the microphone I'm using up here, this shotgun mic, seems to capture a lot of sound. So I'm gonna pray for my veggies that they don't die, and I'm gonna make this video as fast as possible. What I should really be doing is using this microphone right here, the Shure SM7B. It's another dynamic microphone, and it seems to only capture, when you have it at an appropriate gain level, seems to only capture things like this far away in this little bubble here. And once you get this far away, everything's super quiet. So I should be using this in my living room with all these ugly waves bouncing around. I just moved in recently. I don't have a lot of stuff in here. It's still pretty echoey. This mic is gonna help me by picking up only my voice and not the room. So now that we know a little bit about microphones and how they're going to influence our sound as far as picking up the room, not picking up the room, it's time to experiment and find which one actually fits our voice the best. And I know a lot of us don't have access to a bunch of different microphones that we can test out and try. And you don't want to like purchase one and then find out it doesn't work and then purchase another, blah, blah, blah. So if you have access to a store that rents gear, I highly suggest this. You can go in, and for instance, at my local music shop, I can go in and I can rent something like this for, I don't know, like $5 or less for a full day of use. And so I would say just go in, like do a bit of research ahead of time, find out what vocal mic you think might work for you, and then just go rent a few, spend, I don't know, 20 bucks and rent like 4 or 5 mics and test them for a day and do a few recordings, listen back and just see what they're doing to your voice, see how they're working in your room so you can really get a feel for it. This is gonna save you a lot of time and frustration, and these things are so cheap to rent if you have access to a store that rents them. And I think this is going to really speed up your process, give you more quality in your vocal recordings early on so you can focus on other things like setting up your microphone, which is the next step in this process. We set up our mic on a stand. If we need a pop filter, we throw a pop filter in front of that mic and then we find a place to put it in the room. I usually like to start 1/3 of the distance of the room and sing long ways down the room. So I've got 1/3 of the room behind me and I'm singing long ways into the 2/3 of the room. And this is because I don't want to sing directly into a wall. I don't want to be singing and then my voice comes right back at me and probably gets caught by the microphone. I want to have a bunch of space in front of me so that it's going to take a long time for my voice to actually come back and hit the microphone, and hopefully it doesn't come back too strong. Now this 2/3 up the room thing is just a starting point, just somewhere to begin. If it sounds amazing, I guess just roll with that. However, there might be a better option. So you're gonna sing, you're gonna record a bit, and then you're gonna move the microphone 3 inches in front of you, or to the side, or some way, and then you're gonna listen back to that and see how it sounds. Without diving too hard into room acoustics, there are certain points in our room where the mic is not going to sound great, and if we just move a few inches in one direction, it might totally solve our problem. This also goes for up and down, because remember, your floor and your ceiling are also surfaces that are going to reflect sound, and more often than not, these are the most problematic surfaces. You don't realize it, but your roof is only like, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet above your head, depending on how big your ceiling is, but your walls can be like 4 or 5 feet away. So the first surface is up there. Lowering or raising your mic can be just as helpful as moving side to side or forward and backwards, but there is an ideal position for you to be singing. And if this is how you sing into a microphone, I don't want you to have to strain and sing like upwards or downwards. So just keep that mic somewhere that feels comfortable for you. And if you can make a slight adjustment and it's gonna help with the overall sound, try it. Before we even start singing into our microphone, there's one more thing we need to establish, and that is how we will be singing into it. And this is gonna change with every microphone you use, but just as an example, I have my condenser microphone here, and I'm never gonna be this close. Firstly, because I don't wanna blow on my microphone and damage it. But secondly, this is probably not gonna sound good. I'm super close to the mic, therefore it will be super bassy due to the proximity effect. Maybe I wanna be about this far away. And throughout my recording, I wanna try to stay exactly this far away. And one thing I can use to help me accomplish this, and sorry I don't have one with me, but a pop filter, you know, like the little windscreen that you put in front of your microphone. And you could put that this far away from the mic, and then you have a boundary, and you know, never get closer than the pop filter. And for those of you who have sang into a microphone before, you might be thinking right now, well, what if I go to hit a loud note? Don't I have to move away from the microphone so I don't overload it and cause distortion? Well, I've actually got a little trick here. And just basically, instead of moving away, you just sing off axis to keep your vocal sound more consistent. And I've actually made a video on this to help explain why this works. And I'll post that like up here or wherever it goes, and I'll drop it in the description as well. Our next step here is gain staging. And that just means essentially moving the gain knob on your audio interface until your vocal is at a decent level. I like to start off by having vocalists sing the loudest part of the song while I'm adjusting the gain so that we know for sure we will not be clipping. And the level that we're looking for here is nowhere near 0 dB at the top of the meter. In fact, I think in your DAW, the program you're using to record, I think the vocal level should be around halfway up your meter, maybe a touch more. Most plugins work really well around -18 decibels in digital systems. When I first started recording, someone told me that I need to record things as hot, meaning as loud as possible, without going over 0 dB and distorting the sound. And that's bullshit. Most of us are working with 24-bit audio now, meaning we have a ton of headroom, meaning it's super dynamic. This is not an analog console. Distorting in digital does not sound good, and we don't need to go anywhere near 0 dB. Look at that vocal level coming in on the meter, and then look at 0 dB above it, and then look at all this free space. This is your headroom. This is the space that we have to use for mixing and adding effects and mastering. So turn that gain knob down and keep those waves humble. Okay, so a quick recap. We are getting out of our closet. We're choosing a big open room with not a lot of echo or reverb. We're not standing too close to any reflective surfaces. We're standing about 1/3 down the room with the long part of the room in front of us. We're choosing a mic that fits our voice, suits the room, and we are appropriately distancing ourselves from the microphone. We are gain staging, setting a good level so that we're not recording our vocals too hot. We are nowhere near 0 dB. And then we're moving the mic around the room, trying to find the most ideal position to sing in. And that's pretty much it for our setup. The last thing that you need to do before you start recording is warm up your voice. Try doing some vocal exercises or just singing through the song a few times. One thing I like to do to pump up the confidence of the vocalist is add some reverb to the track so that we have some nice ambience going on when we're singing. And that's pretty much it. Sing your song. Let me know in the comments if you thought this was helpful. Hit the like button, or if you can expand on it. Maybe you have some other tricks that you use when you're recording that you can share with us. If you thought it was dumb and you learned nothing, hit the dislike button. And either way, see you next week.